Okay. My topic is inner peace. And I chose to think about it as I choose peace. Because for the last couple of months, I've had anything but peace in my thinking in my life, because we've had a dishwasher, I told you all that, a dishwasher leak, and it's just been not good. And I finally turned the whole thing over to my daughter. And I felt such relief. As I started my lesson, I had to do something because I was disturbed. And I don't like that feeling. I've experienced enough peace in my life that when I'm out of that, it's very uncomfortable. And so I'm happy to say that the last 3 days, I've been more peaceful than I have in the last few months. So I want to start my lesson with a quote, and it says this: "With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and orphans, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations." Who said that? Abraham Lincoln. That was his second inaugural address, seeking to make peace after the nation's Civil War. And President Lincoln's quote seemed appropriate to start off my lesson this morning because it is Memorial Day weekend. And we've acknowledged all those people who have given their lives in this service. One thing I would like to do, though, is for those servicemen and women, veterans, who are present this morning, I would like to honor you as well. So would you please stand and let us thank you for the service that you have given. Whether you were stateside, overseas, National Guard, Army, Navy, Air Force, whatever, Coast Guard. Thank you very much. We appreciate what you've given and the sacrifices that you've made, leaving your families, having hardships, living on a veteran's pay. I did that for a while. It's not fun. So thank you again. Now, it seems the world has been seeking peace for a very long time. Does it seem that way to you? Yet when it comes to peace, there seems to be a lot of wanting in the human being. We want peace in our world, we want peace in our minds, peace in our hearts, peace in our homes. We want peace in our neighborhoods, peace in our churches, our communities, our nation, and the world, right? We want a world where nation does not lift up sword against nation, where there is acceptance and understanding in other people's religious beliefs and traditions. I have been told by some that I'm doing the work of the devil, that our teaching is sinful. And some people don't think that we believe in God. Now, I'd just like to have the understanding of other people to just let us be, let us do our good work. So then I have to stay out of judgment about what they're saying and doing. I work on that one. Yeah. Dr. Martin Luther King said, "The aftermath of violence is tragic bitterness, while the aftermath of nonviolence is the creation of the beloved community. Now, I don't know how many of you remember, but Reverend Michael, Reverend Kathy greet almost every Sunday with good morning, beloved community. And that's a slogan from CSL, home office, the team that put together the vision for our centers, that we are now creating a beloved community. So what we're learning is what Gandhi said. We have to be the peace we want to see. So in order to do that, we also need to do what Dr. Holmes says when he writes in the textbook, no one can demonstrate happiness and cling, or no one can demonstrate peace and cling to unhappiness. Got it? He can demonstrate resignation and call it peace, but it will not be peace. No person whose entire time is spent in the contemplation of limitation can demonstrate freedom from such limitation. Now, I'd like to say, he says no person whose entire time is spent in the contemplation of limitation. I don't think anybody here spends their entire time in the contemplation of limitation. God help us, right? So I'd like to change, if I might, Dr. Holmes' words, to say no person who spends any time or some time in the contemplation of limitation can demonstrate freedom from that limitation. So I'll start my lesson this morning again by reminding you of Rembrandt's portrait, the painting of the biblical story of the Sea of Galilee. If you remember, that little ship occupied by Jesus and his disciples is hit by this huge wave. And looking closely at the painting, I couldn't find one online, or I'd put it up on the board. You can almost feel the shudder of that wave running through the whole boat. The rigging is loose and it's blowing in the wind. You get the picture? It might be something like the storm we had the other night. I'm sure a ship was being hit by a wave somewhere. Now, the disciples are panic-stricken, but in the midst of that terrible storm, the disciples had to waken Jesus because he was sleeping in the back of the boat. Was anybody wakened by the storm the other night? I think we all were. Or let me ask this, is anybody slept through that last 2 nights? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 people. Oh, can we touch you? Wow. My husband's a deep sleeper, but it woke him up. But wouldn't it be wonderful if we could all be as peaceful as that during a storm, or during the storms of the conditions of our lives, like a dishwasher flood? Boy, I had to practice and practice and practice and just totally release it and let it go. Because it's uncomfortable to be in that kind of upset. I think we need to make the point that the peace I'm talking about is not the peace where there's only quiet, nothing going on. I mean, that happens after a forest fire, right? The kind of peace I'm talking about is to be its inner peace. And it's to be able to stand in the midst of the chaos and not be disturbed. Like Jesus, sleeping in the back of the boat. So it's possible for us to do that. But there's got to be a reason why that's happening. And I think it's negativity. The limitation that we see around us that Dr. Holmes told us that we can't be involved in. So for a good metaphysician to be peaceful in the midst of chaos takes work. Every day we're bombarded with news about more violence happening somewhere, or wars in the Middle East escalating at every turn, people suffering horrible conditions as they immigrate to other places trying to have a life. And I don't know about you, but I'm still shaken from the shootings in our schools that continue. Not to mention what happens in our city right here on a daily basis. It seems there's a stabbing or a shooting or robbery or something going on every single day. So, to add to that, the catastrophic events around the world. God, this is negative, isn't it? With inconsistent weather patterns, hurricanes, drought, floods, heat waves, and the fires that recently devastated Paradise and Butte County and Southern California, as well as the political field that has our country divided in so many ways. So I would say that as a whole, people are fear-driven, and feeling somewhat helpless to try to change things. Anybody feel that way at times? Just me. I would say that as a whole, people are I already said that. But there's hope and possibilities, because as religious scientists, we can choose to do something different if we choose to do that. We need to bring the same consciousness that Jesus had when he was sleeping in the back of the boat, being rocked by the wind and the sea. And I would guess he was saying, I choose peace. Sometimes it's difficult to do that, as I've found out. I choose peace. I'm peaceful for a little while. And then I have to choose it again because something else happened that's out of my control. I can't make anything happen. And it's frustrating. So I have to continually choose peace. Eckhart Tolle and Deepak Chopra gave a free workshop sometime back entitled Awakening from the Illusion of Separateness, Spiritual Truths to Help Heal a Divided World. Anybody see that? Yeah, a few of us. And as metaphysicians, we know we need to trust in the power of God to be at the center of all activity. But even Deepak mentioned that he was challenged and caught off center often by the events that are happening in the world today. He also admitted that we're feeling more separate from God and other people, and he has a belief that it's because of the media. When a crisis happens, we don't hear about it just once. It's over and over again. And we not only hear it, but we see it on TV, on our iPads, on our phones, or whatever gadget we're using in the moment. Eckhart said more division happens on Facebook and Twitter because we don't see the other person. And abuse from insults and negativity flow quite easily. He also said social media enhances the otherness of people instead of feeling the unity and the connection. So criticism, blame, shame, judgments are rampant in every form of media, and our ego has a heyday with that mindset. It's the ego that feeds on negativity. So we need to remember that our ego has to have an enemy to reinforce its superiority, and that it thrives on this conflict. So again, as metaphysicians, we all know that in order to choose peace, we can't do it by doing the same thing over and over again. Einstein said that if you're doing something over and over again and you just get the same results, it's insanity. So there has to be a change of mind. We have to trust in the power by turning into that consciousness that cannot be divided and is untouched by worldly conditions. Even though it seems harder and harder to do, we have to practice turning inward to the source, being so attuned and open to receive and move forward the peace of God that is already within us. We don't have to create it. It's there. But we have to turn toward it and let it flow through us. Now, if you've been in this teaching any time at all, you know one of the basic principles is the idea that it is done unto us as we believe. It's not what we hope to believe or what we would like to believe, but what we really, really believe. So why is it that something so simple as being believing in the oneness of life so hard to maintain in the face of adversity? Why? Why does that happen? I think that there's somebody who knows what that answer is. And there's a YouTube video by Rob Dial titled "You Are Being Brainwashed." And he has some ideas that I think will help us know what to do. I've shown this video before, but I think it's worth seeing again.
To be alive as a human. Now you might ask yourself, why would the news concentrate on so much negativity if the world is actually getting better? And the reason why is because they understand the way your brain works. Your brain is designed to look for the negative. And the reason why is because your brain wants you to stay alive. So it focuses on the negative. So if the news puts out more and more negative, you're more likely to watch. Your brain is going to get addicted to watching that negativity, which in turn turns into more advertising dollars for the news companies that you're watching. So of course it seems more negative. Of course it seems like the world is getting worse. But there has never been a time where it's been more safe to be a human than right now. So what can you take from this? Instead of watching the news and thinking that the world is negative and allowing them to brainwash you, you can brainwash yourself. You can start reading books. You can watch motivational or instructional or educational stuff on YouTube. You can listen to podcasts. Because here's the deal. No matter what you listen to or watch or read, it's going to brainwash you. So why don't you brainwash yourself with something that's going to be beneficial for you versus what the media continues to feed you? Because if you continue to eat what they feed you, you have to deal with the sickness that's going to happen in your mind.
So, we know what we need to do. We need to be willing to do our spiritual practice. We need to be willing to come to classes, come to church, come to the center on a spiritual, come to the center on a consistent basis. Steep yourself in the consciousness of this teaching. Let it move you into something greater, something better. Our consistent meditation, prayers, affirmations, telling the truth, and doing what Gandhi told us to do, being the change we want to see in the world. We're not here to turn on the news. We're here to make good news by consistently knowing the truth. And the truth is, we're God beings. There's nothing wrong here. Really, there's nothing wrong in the world. As he said, this is the best time to be alive. But so many people are in fear, and we pick that up. And then our brain takes it in, and we act on that instead of what we know to be the truth. So Eckhart says we don't have to refrain from participation in the world, but we need to stop being abusive and aggressive to ourselves and others. Louise Hay used to have 10 commandments, and the first one was, be kind to your mind. When we're not being kind to our mind, we're letting fear run us. Fear, shame, guilt, all the negative emotions. So spiritual practices, taking our classes, connected more to the things that feed our soul rather than tuning into the media. We can tune into the media through podcasts and YouTube presentations that feed the positivity that we're looking for. And then Dr. Holmes, and I've said this to myself repeatedly in the last 2 months, I have to turn entirely away from the condition. Is that easy to do? Not all the time. But when we do that, we turn inward and connect with a peace that passes all understanding, the peace that we've been given by our birthright, the peace that allows this divine intelligence to move us forward on the spiritual path. We have an intelligent power, and we need to be using it intelligently, drawing from the ideas of what we are in truth. So let's put our trust and power in that idea. Let's boost ourselves into the higher awareness of the truth, that all really is well in the world. Will you say that with me? All is really well in the world. There really is nothing to fear.
There really is nothing to fear.
God is our source.
God is our source.
And we are safe and loved.
And we are safe and loved.
So, let's be like the Christ. The gentleman who was sleeping in the back of the boat, who didn't let the waves and the wind scare him, but simply slept in the peace of God. And when we do that, we're doing what we need to be doing, expressing the presence. And so it is.